Because we need to use the pen tool with a fair bit of skill, it would be nice if you revisited the pen tool exercise if you are struggling with the pen tool. And I'll show you how I use the pen tool around this. Most of you, I think, have done the pen tool exercise. I'm going to close all of these. I just need the layers menu. So that's my layers menu. What I like to do is I like to lock this layer so I don't move it by mistake, and I create a new layer on top. Now with the pen tool, I will make this in two parts. So I'll start here. And you can see this curve. I try to come to the maximum point of the curve. I click and I drag. I come to this point of the curve. I click and I drag. The drag is along the tangent to the curve at that point. So this is the curve. This is the perpendicular to the curve at this point, and this is the tangent to the curve at this point. So, I mean, if you have paid some attention to mathematics in school, great. If you haven't, just try and do it intuitively. It helps to understand the math behind it. All of the vectors are math. All of the software you use have got math behind it. The programming that you guys are doing also involves a lot of math. So you can see I come to the curve and I click and drag along the tangent. Now this first point I come back and I click and drag here because I want a bit of a curve there. So this is my pair. I'm going to do another one. I'll start at this point. A bit of a click and a drag here. Click here. Bit of a click and a drag here. Now the thing is, for such a small object, my snap tool is on, and I don't like that. So I'm going to press Ctrl U, turn off my smart guides. So nothing is actually in the way, and I can just click and drag, click and drag, click, 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 click and drag, click and drag, click and drag, and come back to this point and click. Now those of you who weren't here last week should do last week's exercises, and primarily the pen tool exercise. That is not required in submissions, but it's important for today's exercise. What is required in submissions is the brushes, but you can complete them later. Next week will be a catch-up week. So I've got these two parts. Now, Adobe Illustrator has got gradients which are painful. You can see it's got a gradient. You can come here and you click and drag, and it should give you a gradient. Fill with a gradient. You can choose a radial gradient, and if I clicked here, double clicked on this green thing, you can see it is by default black and white, which is annoying. Illustrator comes with some diseases. This is one of them. Now to get the green, you go out here and so I double click. You gotta try and get the swatch and try and get a green color. That's one way of going about it. Okay, so it has got these radial gradients, linear gradients, and so on. But I really don't like these gradients. The way I use gradients is I use this gradient mesh. So I'm just going to fill that with a flat black for now. So I'll just come back here, choose a flat color. Where's my swatch? So I'm just going to choose a flat color. Okay, now I must have mentioned that this tool actually inherits the properties, which means if I have a box here and that box is of a different color, I can use the dropper tool to pick up this color. So you can see this is selected, but if I pick up this color, this guy changes to the properties of this guy. The dropper tool also helps us in selecting colors, which means if I actually use the dropper tool and I click on this thing, I can get the basic pair color. See that? So I can get the pear color from my original image here. So that's my basic pear color. Okay, now the most important part of today's exercise is the gradient mesh. I need a copy of this before I start meshing it up or messing it up. So I need a copy of it. I'm going to press Alt key, make a copy of it on the side. I need several copies of it actually. So I'll make a few copies. And I come back here. So the gradient mesh, you can see there's a highlight here. So I'm going to click somewhere here, right? Now I've got a point here and this point is selected. It's got a red dot and this point has got a white dot. While this point is selected, I will choose white. You can see every point has a color. Or I can use the dropper tool and choose this lighter green and say maybe I want it a bit more lighter, bit more green. So I've got a light shade here. I'm going to again use the gradient mesh and click somewhere. You can see the dark side is somewhere here. So I'm just going to click somewhere here and I'll use the dropper tool. While that point is selected, I'm going to choose a darker shade of green. So a darker shade of green has been selected. And you can see I've already got my 3D-ish effect. I'm using the gradient mesh tool again to come somewhere up here. I can come somewhere here. You can see I don't want to add too many vertices, so I'll click on the line itself. And because the darker color was selected, it automatically applied it, which was good for me. And I could probably do that with this color, so I could come here and make this a bit darker. And you can see how it's evolving into a 3D shape. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I will, however, make a patch here because I'll select this again, sorry, and I will come and make a patch here. And this point I'm going to make it a bit brownish, so I'll just take the dropper tool and choose this brownish green color, because that's where my stick will sit. And you can see it's looking fairly realistic. So this one, select the brown. I could use a gradient for this one, but gradient mesh, I come on this side, choose a lighter color just to give a gradient. On this same segment, if you keep clicking here and there, you'll get a very dense mesh. So don't keep clicking here and there. On this very segment, I'm going to click, and this side I'm going to make it dark. So you can see now I've got dark and light. I can come here and say, okay, I need this part to be a bit more dark. So I'm going to come here and say, okay, this part needs to be more really dark because the bottom is getting darker. But there is a vector pair, fully scalable. I need to make the highlights. So the highlights involve one more function that you have not seen. So far we've used pen tool. If you have done the pen tool exercise, that should be okay. And we have used the gradient mesh. All we have done is click and we assign color to the vertices. If you make a mistake, no problem. You can always come and select a vertex. See this? You can always select a vertex. You can select a vertex using the white arrow tool. The black arrow tool selects the whole shape. But the white arrow tool selects an individual entity within the shape. So I can select this point and say, hey, I want this more white. So I can actually change that to be absolutely white and it becomes white. Okay? I don't want it that white. It's too bright on the screen. Part 2. Let me show you the basics of part 2. Suppose I have any two shapes. Suppose I have any two shapes. and these shapes can be similar shapes or different shapes. If I have any two shapes, I can do a lot of things. I can fiddle with them to merge them, divide them using something called as the Pathfinder. That's the Pathfinder. What can I do with the Pathfinder? Let's see. I can select these two shapes. I can merge them. Probably this one is a better option. Yep, merge them. My favorite one is this guy here, divide. I can divide them. After I divide them, they stay joined as a group. So I can ungroup them. And when I ungroup them, I get these cutouts. These cutouts are what I need. I'll show you an easy way how to make the swoosh, and your QTAC logo is something like this. So many of you who remember the QTAC logo, take two ellipses, divide them, ungroup them, bang, and you have a QTAC logo that looks something like this. I don't know. I think it's more Q-ish, it's more vertical. But it's made up of two swooshes. But this thing makes interesting elements for a logo, this Pathfinder tool. You divide, ungroup, and remove the parts you don't want. Now I want two parts here to get those highlights. I was inside one of those elements, so let me just go here. I press Alt and I make a copy of it. So I've got these two parts here. I've got these two shapes. Okay. I'm going to select both of them, divide, object, ungroup. When I ungroup, you can see I've got these parts. So I'm going to scale them a bit because I just want them to sit. I just wanted the contour, and this is enough for me. So this one I'm going to make it darker. I'm just going to select a darker color. And this one I'm going to make it brighter. Probably requires a lot more fiddling, but you get the idea. So I'll stop the recording at this today. So the first part is really this. The second part for which I've kept this was, if you wanted to experiment making a logo, take a basic shape, and I've taken a rounded rectangle here. I've taken a rounded rectangle, just give it a color. Take my pear, try to fit my pear inside this, and I do this a lot in my commercial work. I'd use this technique a lot. Divide, ungroup, and there you can see that's my pear. And I'll just share with you some of the work I did earlier. But yeah, I'll show you some samples, and that's what we want to do with the second part, and add some text and typography. And I'll demonstrate that again, but the main purpose for today is to do this gradient mesh, and I'll make one more demo for logos.